bead boy. I'm just playing. I gotta go, y'all. I gotta make some money.
They say you can't judge a book by its cover, but what if the cover is a clever disguise? Some beggars pretend to be blind, while others master the art of looking legless, all for a little sympathy and spare change. You've seen them on the streets, but do you really know who's behind the mask? How far would someone go to make a quick buck? Join us on this shocking exposé as we unravel the top 20 fake beggars who were caught red-handed. Number 20. A Fifth Avenue fraud. Fifth Avenue is well known for its expensive luxury jewelry and high-end clothing stores, but it is also a hotspot for scammers. One such scammer was a woman who, at first sight, appeared to be a helpless elderly lady on crutches. She seemed to have a hunchback or some sort of disability, which made her look even more pitiable. However, her carefully constructed image wasn't as innocent as it seemed. One day, a man who was observing her on Fifth Avenue noticed something unusual. As she panhandled, using a curbside cup to collect donations, he saw her performing a suspicious action. Whenever someone dropped money into the cup, she would quickly empty it into a hidden handbag. Her scam earned her anywhere from $50 to $500 an hour, far exceeding the minimum wage. After observing her secretly transfer the donations from her cup into a hidden handbag, a team of undercover journalists decided to investigate further. They waited until nightfall and followed her as she left the street. To their surprise, she climbed into a minivan, and when she began, the change was shocking. No longer using crutches, she walked confidently and appeared to be a young, healthy woman. She had changed into an elegant, high-end outfit that looked more suited for shopping on Fifth Avenue than begging on it.
We've been watching you the last few days, and you don't really need those crutches, do you? We saw you this morning walking perfectly fine.
Number 19. Bangladeshi beggar's deception. In many third-world countries like Bangladesh, begging is a common sight due to widespread poverty. With millions struggling to survive below the poverty line, it is not unusual to encounter people asking for help on the streets. While many of these individuals are genuinely in need, there are some who exploit the situation, taking advantage of the generosity of others. A few years back, a surprising incident occurred in one of Bangladesh's inner cities that left many people shocked and angry. A video went viral, showing a man lying on the ground, claiming to be severely ill, and asking for money from passers-by. He had laid out a mat on the roadway, pretending to be a helpless, sick individual. However, it soon became apparent that he was not as unsafe as he seemed. Instead, he was a healthy man who had chosen to deceive others, using a fake story to earn easy money. But then, something unexpected happened. After a few people started questioning him, the man suddenly sat up straight, as if nothing had ever been wrong. It was almost like witnessing a miraculous recovery right before their eyes. Number 18. The Virginia Beggar. In Virginia, a woman named Micah Dominguez found herself in the spotlight after being caught by two men who had been investigating her for some time. For weeks, Dominguez had been begging for money from drivers at a nearby stoplight. The men, suspicious of her claims, decided to confront her and filmed the encounter, which they later posted on YouTube.
Stop stealing people's money. Stop begging for money. You own a car. You're not homeless. Some people are really homeless.
The men followed Dominguez after she left the juncture and walked a short distance to a McDonald's, where her car was parked. They questioned her about her supposed homelessness. Dominguez explained that she had never claimed to be homeless, only that she was disabled and unable to work, which is why she was asking for money. But the nature of her disability was not confirmed or discussed, and it's important to avoid making further claims or expectations about her situation. Despite her claims of disability, the woman appeared to be in good health. She spent long hours standing in the hot sun and walked a fair distance to a McDonald's. The men filming her began to argue that she was not really disabled and was possibly illegally collecting disability benefits from the government. As the confrontation heated up, the woman required help from McDonald's staff, but they either refused or couldn't assist her. She was left to face the men alone.
What are you gonna do? You don't have you're begging for money. You're begging for money. Look at your car.
Want from me, you stupid.
Number 17. Pregnant and deceptive. A young pregnant woman was frequently seen begging on a street corner with her young son by her side. One day, a passerby noticed her and observed her actions for a short while. To their surprise, after begging, she and her boyfriend got into a luxury car and drove off to a home estimated to cost over $2,500 per month. This shocking scene was captured in several photos that quickly spread online and were sent to local news stations. The images show the woman, visibly pregnant, asking for money with her young son, likely trying to use his presence to call up sympathy from passers-by. Her actions led people to believe she was a struggling mother in need of help. However, she had been seen multiple times around town, raising suspicions about her true circumstances. The woman's face had become quite familiar to the locals, who believed she was in deep distress. Many people in the area felt a strong sense of pity for her and were eager to help in any way they could. Some even went out of their way to buy her food to ensure she and her young son were taken care of. However, everything changed when her story was exposed on local news channels. The broadcasts revealed that her claims were likely false, crushing the image she had carefully constructed.
So this 10 News viewer said she'd wondered the story behind this woman for 2 months. Then she said she saw her get into her Mercedes and drive away.
Number 16, the Kenyan Beggar. In Kenya, a scam artist took his act to new heights, creating an elaborate performance to deceive unsuspecting passers-by. This man wasn't content with simply playing the part of a beggar. He went all out to make his fake injuries look as convincing as possible. To start, he glued a fake medical drip to his arm, a detail designed to make people believe he was in desperate need of help. To add to the drama, he splashed some paint around the drip, creating a shockingly realistic effect that was sure to pull at the heartstrings of anyone who walked by. But he didn't stop there. This man knew that to really sell his story, he needed to go the extra mile. So, he wrapped his hand in what looked like layers upon layers of bandages, making it seem as though he was suffering from a severe injury. The effort he put into his disguise was so convincing that you might almost believe his injuries were real, but it was all part of his act. It's likely that he didn't pull off this scheme alone. He probably had a partner in crime, someone who helped him carefully wrap his hand in what seemed like miles of fabric. With just a little bit of teamwork and some clever tricks, he managed to fool countless people, earning their sympathy and their money without breaking a sweat. Number 15, Chinese couple's heart-wrenching hoax. This cunning couple from China discovered a way to turn deception into a beneficial daily routine. Their strategy was simple, yet very effective. The wife would settle in under a warm blanket at an active joint, appearing fragile and in desperate need of help. Meanwhile, the husband would create a sign with a heartbreaking message, claiming that his wife was seriously ill and needed urgent financial support. Their concerned act was so convincing that they managed to pull in over $300 a day. This wasn't just a one-time stunt. It became their regular performance, a well-rehearsed performance that broke the kindness of strangers day after day. The husband's sign would often detail a tragic story, perhaps mentioning expensive medical treatments or the struggle to afford basic necessities, which only increased the emotional response from those passing by. What's even more shocking is how they operated with military-like precision. The husband would occasionally switch locations, ensuring they didn't overstay in one spot and produce suspicion. They targeted areas with high foot traffic, particularly near shopping centers or public transport hubs, where people were more likely to be generous. Despite their fraudulent activities, they managed to avoid authorities for quite some time, blending into the crowd and taking advantage of the chaotic environment of busy crossings. Their pattern highlights not only their audacity, but also the lengths some individuals will go to make use of others for financial gain. Number 14, the Desperate Beggar. This beggar wasn't just another con artist trying to trick people for easy money. His story was one of deep desperation. The man in question was Dinesh Duavedi, an Indian school teacher who had earned a PhD and retired with a pension of 35,000 rupees a month, which is about $500. In addition to his pension, he had some extra income from his work, which should have provided him with a comfortable life. However, despite this financial support, Duavedi was often found begging on the streets of Jaipur, leaving many people puzzled. Why would someone with a steady income resort to begging? The answer was rooted in a heartbreaking personal struggle. Duavetti's son was battling a severe addiction, which drove him to steal from his father and even physically abuse him. As his son's behavior grew more destructive, Duavetti's finances began to go down, leaving him in a desperate situation. With his resources nearly depleted and unable to meet his own needs, Duavetti felt he had no choice but to fake an injury and beg on the streets to survive. His tragic situation eventually caught the attention of the media, who uncovered and exposed the real story behind his actions. What seemed like a simple case of deception was actually a desperate plea for help from a man who had lost everything to his son's addiction. Number 13. New York Beggar. A woman who had been begging at a busy junction in New York for over 4 years was finally caught. Mark Bully, a reporter from the New York Times, estimated that she was making about $20 every 20 minutes by appealing to wealthy shoppers in a popular high-end shopping district. Many generous passers-by not only gave her cash, but also offered her food and drinks, believing she was in need. Day after day, the woman would sit at the same spot, collecting money from kind-hearted people. By the end of each day, she would leave with as much as $500 in her pocket, which added up to an amazing $14,000 a month, simply for sitting there and asking for money. A reporter, who had been observing her for some time, decided to approach her after noticing that she would walk away and head home at the end of each day. Appearing perfectly fine, the reporter confronted her about her actions, and to everyone's surprise, the woman admitted that her entire act was a fraud. The secret of where she lived during her deceitful activities remains unsolved, but her confession shocked many who had been fooled by her scheme. When confronted by the reporter, the woman surprisingly confessed to her deceitful actions. Number 12. Flexibility of deception. This man has mastered the art of deception by pretending to have a severe disability, and his scam is nothing short of clever. Here's how he pulls it off. He sets himself up on a busy sidewalk. The way that it appears he's severely impaired. Most notably, he positions his foot on his shoulder in a shocking display that immediately draws attention and sympathy. The dramatic pose is designed to draw the hearts of passers-by, compelling them to drop their spare change into his collection. Throughout the day, he moves from one district to another, putting on this act for different crowds. When he needs a break, he retreats to a private spot, slipping back into his normal self, completely unrecognizable as the seemingly disabled beggar. In an interview he eventually agreed to, this so-called actor confessed to his deceitful methods. Remarkably, his carefully crafted performance earns him over $500 a month. What makes his act so successful are his incredible flexibility and the convincing nature of his performance. He has turned his physical talents into a lucrative venture, fooling countless people with his seemingly genuine plight. While he has found a profitable way to use his abilities for deception, it's possible that his talents could be put to more legitimate use. Number 11. The miracle on the sidewalk. This clever fraud artist had perfected his act to the point where he could effortlessly fool anyone who crossed his path. Every morning, he would choose a busy spot on the sidewalk, strategically positioning himself where foot traffic was heavy. Dressed in ragged clothes, he would settle down on the cold pavement, his legs bent at awkward angles to create the scene that they were completely paralyzed. With his head bowed low and his eyes filled with a carefully crafted sorrow, he appeared as though he was enduring unimaginable hardship. His performance was nothing short of theatrical. He would let out soft groans and occasionally glance up with a look of despair, ensuring that his act was believable enough to stir the emotions of passers-by. People couldn't resist the urge to stop and help, often leaving coins or small bills in his outstretched hand, convinced they were aiding someone in true need. But the real drama unfolded one afternoon when law enforcement officers who had been tipped off about his suspicious behavior arrived on the scene. The officers approached cautiously, expecting to assist a disabled man. What happened next was nothing short of astonishing. As soon as he spotted the officers, the man, who had seemed so weak and crippled just moments before, suddenly sprang to life. He unfolded his legs, leaped up from the ground, and took off running with a speed that left everyone around him speechless. Number 10. Breaking the beggar label. James Southern is a man who has turned begging into a full-time job, and he is not shy about it. Unlike many who might be seen living in temporary shelters or on the streets, Southern resides in a regular house, and he openly talks about his profession as a professional beggar. This openness has shocked many, including the Daily Mail, which was particularly mad by his obvious admission. Southern has openly admitted that he is not homeless. He simply views begging as his chosen occupation. The societal rules for poverty and begging seem to be under study. It prompts us to question when and why we establish these rules, and whether they truly reflect the complication of people's situations. Some might argue that there is a group within the British press and political circles that would be excited to enforce strict poverty laws, essentially reintroducing harsh conditions suggestive of historical workhouses. This would ensure a steady supply of desperate individuals, ready to work for minimal wages, ultimately benefiting corporate interests by keeping labor costs low. Southern's case highlights the broader debate about the nature of poverty, the morals of begging, and the societal expectations tied to these issues. Number 9. The Circus Act. In 2019, this man appeared to be just another ordinary beggar, with a severely deformed body that made him look like he was genuinely suffering. His most shocking feature was a twisted leg that seemed to unnaturally bend over his left shoulder. To passers-by, he looked like someone in desperate need of help, but there was something not quite right about his appearance. Suspecting that something was off, a camera crew decided to follow him. Their suspicions quickly proved correct. It turned out that this beggar was not disabled at all. When the crew tried to confront him, he became aggressive, even attempting to push the camera out of his face. This dramatic encounter exposed the beggar's deception, revealing how far some people will go to exploit the kindness of others. However, when he believed no one was watching, he finally dropped his act. The cameras eventually caught up with him, and he decided to come clean. He explained why he had chosen this unusual way of making money, and even demonstrated how he managed to twist and contort his body so convincingly. His incredible flexibility was so impressive that it seemed like he would have been better suited for a career in the circus rather than on the streets. Number 8. Exposing the luxury liar. This panhandler was not just your average street beggar. He was running a well-crafted scam. Day after day, he would stand on busy street corners with a sign that read he was homeless and desperate for help, tugging at the heartstrings of passers-by. People moved by his apparent plight would hand over their hard-earned money, believing they were helping someone in genuine need. At the end of each day, after collecting his earnings, this man didn't retreat to a shelter or a park bench as one might expect. Instead, he went back to a comfortable home in a nice neighborhood. His deception might have gone unnoticed if it weren't for a keen observer who began to suspect that something wasn't quite right. This observant individual tipped off the Vale family, a popular YouTube channel known for their investigative work. The Vale family decided to take on the case, and their investigation was nothing short of thorough. But when the Vale family finally confronted him at his doorstep, the man was caught completely off guard. He tried to deny everything, claiming he had no idea what they were talking about, but the evidence was convincing. The YouTubers had footage of him in the same clothes, holding the same sign, and begging on the streets just hours before. Number 7. Fake soldier in Tampa. In Tampa, Florida, a heated clash unfolded when an angry veteran confronted a panhandler who was dressed in a military uniform. This incident took place near the MacDill Air Force Base, a location known for its strong military presence. The veteran, deeply affected by his own experiences and the lasting scars of his service, was incensed upon seeing someone he believed was falsely claiming to be a veteran. The beggar was wearing a uniform that included a patch indicating a Special Forces affiliation. However, the veteran noticed that the patch was inconsistent with the claims being made. Furious at the perceived disrespect to his fallen comrades and to the military community as a whole, he approached the beggar and demanded he remove the uniform. The veteran's anger was deep as he shouted at the man, stressing that the uniform represented the sacrifice of real heroes who had died in service. The clash left the panhandler clearly shaken and unhappy. The veteran's emotional response highlighted the deep sense of betrayal and dishonor felt when someone pretends to be part of a group that has endured real hardship and sacrifice. The meeting highlighted the emotional weight carried by those who have served and their intolerance for dishonesty in their ranks. Number 6. Panhandling for profit. A few years ago, a news crew stumbled upon a surprising story about a group of organized panhandlers who were traveling across California. At first glance, these individuals didn't seem to be causing any harm, but as they moved from city to city, people began to notice some unsettling patterns. Wherever they went, these panhandlers carried nearly identical signs, each with a message that tugged at the heartstrings of passers-by. From the San Fernando Valley to Santa Clara, the signs read, "Please help, I've lost my job, and I have 2 kids, God bless you." Some signs even mentioned having 4 kids, but the wording was strikingly similar, raising suspicions that something wasn't quite right. As the investigation unfolded, the news crew discovered something shocking. One of these panhandlers wasn't actually poor or in desperate need. When questioned by an undercover producer, one of them claimed to be out of work and said they had taken the bus to get to their spot. But the truth was far different. These panhandlers were treating begging like a full-time job, complete with organized shifts and strategic locations, rather than as a last resort for survival. The revelation was mind-blowing. This wasn't just a group of individuals down on their luck. It was a coordinated effort to use the generosity of others, turning what should have been a cry for help into a well-oiled operation. Now it's time for subscriber pick. Elmwood Square, a lively small-town hub, was always bustling with people. In the midst of it all, an old man known as Gramps, with his worn-out coat and tired eyes, and a young mother named Maggie, cradling her baby, seemed like they were hopeless. Gramps looked helpless, his appearance pulling at people's hearts, making them drop coins into his cup. Maggie, sitting on the other side of the square, looked just as desperate, and passers-by offered her money, food, and even toys for her child. For weeks, the townspeople were moved by their stories and gave generously. But something didn't add up. Despite never interacting, Gramps and Maggie always arrived and left the square at the same time. Linda, a cafe owner, grew suspicious and teamed up with her friend Sam, who owned a bookshop, to investigate. They set up a camera to watch the square. Surprisingly, every evening after the crowds had all gone, Gramps would stand up straight to change to be a healthy middle-aged man. Maggie's baby was just a bundle of clothes, and she too transformed, swapping her sad look for designer sunglasses and a polished appearance. The two would meet, count their earnings with glee, and leave together. Linda and Sam handed the footage to the local news station, and the next day, reporters caught Gramps and Maggie in the act. Exposed as frauds, their story quickly went viral, revealing how they had tricked the entire town. Number 5. Australia's Chinese begging group. In a shocking operation revealed in Australia, a criminal association from China composed a stylish begging scam across various cities. The group brought over professional beggars, who were part of an elaborate scheme designed to make use of their conditions for financial gain. Unlike isolated scams, this was a well-organized row where the beggars were essentially pressured into their roles, collecting money on behalf of the crime ring. These beggars were intentionally placed in high-traffic areas and popular traveler spots to maximize their earnings. They were trained to appear as though they were in terrible need, often using decorative crutches or fake injuries to draw sympathy and donations from passers-by. The funds collected were then given back to the criminal organization, which used the money for dishonest activities and furthering their criminal enterprise. The operation came to light when local authorities and activists noticed a pattern in the begging activities and reported it. An investigation revealed that these professional beggars were part of a larger network, with many being transported to Australia under false pretenses and then exposed to harsh conditions. When the scheme was exposed, police arrested several individuals who were directly involved in the beginning operations. However, the masterminds behind the scenes, who arranged and profited from the scam, remained difficult to track down. The authorities in Melbourne, where the professional beggars were most active, focus attention that the majority of street beggars are indeed honestly in need of help. Number 4. Filipino Beggar. In the bustling streets of the Philippines, a young man was seen sitting on the ground, giving the impression that he was missing one of his legs. He wore tattered clothes and held a sign pleading for help, which added to the sympathy he was trying to evoke. A curious onlooker, growing increasingly suspicious of his story, began filming the scene and repeatedly asked the man about his condition. The repeated questioning seemed to unsettle the man, who was initially reluctant to answer. His demeanor in the situation began to raise doubts among passers-by. After several tense moments, the man suddenly stood up, revealing to everyone's astonishment that he had both of his legs intact. The reveal was shocking and unsettling. It turned out that he had been using a clever ruse to deceive people into thinking he was disabled and in desperate need. By pretending to be a helpless beggar with a missing leg, he was able to exploit the generosity of those who stopped to offer him money. The deception was part of a broader scheme where he and possibly others like him used similar tactics to collect donations from unsuspecting people. This discovery highlighted the disturbing reality of some panhandling scams, where individuals go to great lengths to deceive compassionate strangers, turning their desperation into a well-planned act designed to draw human kindness for financial gain. Number 3. Larry's Panhandling Scam. The story of Larry the Panhandler is a classic example of deception. Larry, who was based in Woodland Hills, made headlines several years ago for his panhandling activities. He would roam the area, soliciting money from anyone who passed by. Larry was particularly convincing in his role. As an elderly man, he evoked sympathy from those he encountered. He carried a sign claiming he was unemployed and had no income, which encouraged people to give him money. However, his well-practiced act eventually fell apart. Larry's true lifestyle came to light when he was seen multiple times shopping, carrying grocery bags, and even dining inside his car. Reporters uncovered that Larry was living quite comfortably, owned a house in a prestigious neighborhood, and had 2 vehicles. His apparent prosperity starkly contrasted with the image he had portrayed to the public, leading to significant debate and criticism over his fraudulent panhandling. Larry's deception was eventually exposed, and he came clean about his actions. He admitted that he had been pretending to be a beggar since 2008, right after the financial crisis hit, and he lost a significant portion of his wealth. Larry explained that during those tough times, he was desperate for any means to make some extra money. He just needed a way to get a little bit of cash to help make ends meet, he confessed. He revealed that panhandling had become a way for him to supplement his Social Security checks, adding an extra income stream to his limited resources. Number 2. Fake Legless Beggar. On a bustling street in China, where people hurried along with their daily routines, a beggar was exposed in a shocking turn of events. This man had positioned himself on a small, inconspicuous board fitted with wheels, sliding across the pavement in a way that made him appear tragically crippled. His legs were nowhere to be seen, giving the impression that he had lost them entirely. He wore tattered clothes, and his face was carefully set in an expression of sorrow, calling for sympathy from nearly everyone who passed by. Coins and small bills dropped into his cup as people, moved by his apparent plight, reached into their pockets to help. Yet, earlier that same day, an observant passerby had seen this very beggar standing tall and healthy on a crowded bus, chatting casually with other passengers. There was no sign of the disability that he later displayed on the street. Realizing the scam, the passerby didn't hesitate. He walked right up to the beggar and, in front of the growing crowd, confronted him. The beggar tried to maintain his act, but as the passerby described seeing him on the bus, the crowd began to murmur and all eyes turned to the beggar with doubt. With no escape, he was forced to reveal the truth. As the crowd watched in disbelief, he unfolded his legs from beneath his clothes, proving that they were very much intact. Number 1. The Violin Scam. In 2022, the Sheriff's Office in Okaloosa, Florida, issued a warning to the public about so-called talented violinists who were actually tricking people. These individuals were pretending to play the violin. But in reality, they were just mimicking the motions while a recorded violin track played through a loudspeaker. It was all an act to get people to part with their money. Curious about this scam, a local news crew decided to investigate. They brought in a violin expert to review some of the recordings and see if these performances were genuine or just another clever ruse. The findings were surprising. To say the least, the expert was able to pinpoint one woman in particular who was engaging in some truly outrageous behavior. A news anchor attempted to approach this woman to ask her about her so-called art, but it quickly became clear that she was nothing more than a fraud. As you might expect, when confronted, she tried to keep up the act, her hands moving swiftly over the violin as if she was playing for real. Which of these fake beggars caught in the act did you find the most shocking? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section.